the 16th, 2006, a research team of Chinese experts in archaeology, history, and skiing issued athlete declaration in athlete city Xinjiang, China, based on the investigation and research, and announced to the world that athlete in Xinjiang is the earliest birthplace of ski in the world. So on January the 18th, 2015, again, an athlete. So we have experts from China, Norway, and the United States, representing experts from Asia, Europe, and America, jointly signed the Declaration of 2015 on the premise of respecting the scientific research and records of the ancient skiing history and culture in athlete China, announcing to the world their consensus of great significance that athlete Xinjiang, China, is the most ancient skiing area in the world. These are some of the texts of the declaration. So that's part one, about the origin of skiing in China. Part two is about the ancient writings or ancient literature of early ice and snow activities of ancient northern nationalities, northern ethnic groups. We know the above-mentioned region of Atli is a part of the western extension of grassland to the north of Gobi Desert, located between the eastern part and central grasslands of Asia, and has long been the location of strategic importance and corridor for nomadic tribes in North China to travel westward and eastward. In ancient Chinese literature, the description of early skiing activities closely related to the ancient ethnic minorities in this region. And also a lot of the descriptions of ice sports activities have been discovered later, especially since the Sui and Tang dynasty. The early recording of skiing can be found, for example, in the Classic of Mountains and Seas, written in Warring States period, and it is recorded in the Dingling Kingdom. Its people have hair under their knees. The horse hoof is very good at walking. So basically it says that there is a Dingling Kingdom where people have hair below their knees with feet like horses, hooves, and they can walk very fast. And Guo Pu, a scholar in the Jing dynasty, quoted from Shihan Shen Wu, saying that Dingling people will whip their hoof-like feet. They can travel up to 300 miles a day. So Mr. Yuan Ke, famous mythologist from Sichuan Academy of Social Sciences, believes that Dingling in the Qing and Han dynasties was the same nationality from the northern and southern dynasties with different spelling. Dingling in Chinese characters can be spelled differently. So the description of people with hoof-like feet travel very fast is very similar to the characteristics of today's athlete residents, athlete people still using horse-leg skin to wrap their skis. So apart from the literature description in Sui dynasty and Tang dynasty, there are many other records in this literature about sports in winter. For instance, the Sui book North Di on Shiwei has the following description. It takes 11 days to travel from South Shiwei to North Shui. This area is very cold and the snow is as deep as a horse. The ground is, completely covered with snow. So people would use a kind of board, right, to ride on. They would ride on the wood to avoid from being trapped in the snow. So Shiwei is an ancient nationality in the upper reaches of the Heilongjiang River and Nenjiang River basin. They would pay tribute to the Central Plains, to the dynasty, Han dynasty, or Han nationalities in central China. So the above mentioned riding on wood, the wood refers to a kind of pedal wood tools, which are ancient skis made of wood boards, because the ski apparatus made of wooden board can actually be strapped with a stress, can help to add more stress area, reduce local pressure, and can help people to travel much more quickly. It is also called a wooden horse in ancient literature. So we can see that people's knowledge of skiing has grown, and the need for skiing has risen from the actual need in their everyday life, and they have made great improvements gradually. So in border defense, Tongdian, the Basmels who lived in northwest Gansu in the Sui dynasty would often chase down their prey on skis because of the heavy snow in the region. So their skis were shaped like long shields with the front curled up and the bottom covered with horse hides, which would help to reduce friction. And this would the people would tie such skis to their feet while skiing. When skiing downhill, they would go faster than a deer. And when skiing on flatland, they would need to use poles to create pulling forces. When going uphill, they would take off their skis and hold them in hands. This is what is recorded in Tongdian. So the portrayal of riding wood like riding a horse of Basmels is more detailed than that of skiing on wood of the Shui people mentioned above, describing walking on the ground with poles. So there are more details with this description and showing a kind of improvement with the equipment. And all of this literature is a record of the northern nationalities' sports activities, or how they used to travel in winter in North China. So this kind of skiing activities has started to be very popular since as late as 1700 years ago. So skating as a kind of ice-related sports appeared much later than skiing, because compared with skiing, it took people a lot longer to master the skills of skating. In Shijing, the classic of poetry, people were described to be traveling extremely cautiously on ice. According to the historical materials, ice-related activities of tribes in North China can be traced back to the Tang Dynasty. New Book of Tang described the tribes back then. Bayagu people chase down and hunt animals, gliding on ice with feet on wood. So Tongdian, this is a book written by Du You, a politician and historian in the Tang Dynasty, said that Bayagu people all have wooden instruments, chase down a reindeer on ice, and live on farming and hunting. That is to say, the ancient Bayagu people would chase down and hunt prey with their feet on wooden instruments like modern skis. New Book of Tang also said the three Turkic tribes ride wooden horses on ice with boards to support feet and poles to support armpits, and travel very fast. The three tribes were known as wooden horse Turks because they were good at riding wooden horses. In 648, the wooden horse Turks paid allegiance to the Tang Empire. In winter, they would tie wooden instruments to their feet and use wooden poles to support their armpits, and they would slide very far and very fast. So this is the record in the Tang Dynasty. And with each pole, they can slide hundreds of, they can slide dozens of feet. In the above-mentioned early ice-related sports popular among the northern tribes, wooden feet and wooded horses are tools for skating and hunting. Wooden feet might be shorter than the wooden horses, yet more flexible and similar to modern ice skating equipment, which mainly uses the force of the legs to glide forward. In contrast, wooden horses were wooden boards tied to feet, which would need two poles for support. Now let's come to the third part, the evolution of winter sports in Song, Yuan, and Ming dynasties. After the Song and Yuan dynasties, snow-related sports were inherited and updated with the gradual development of ice-related sports, becoming a highlight of winter sports in ancient China, characterized by more diverse forms of ice and snow-related activities, including skiing and also so-called snow appreciation and other recreational activities. While at the same time, we can see that the snow-related sports have been greatly developed. So you have snow appreciation, playing with snow, making snow lions, etc. So in Song Dynasty, old tales of martial arts by Zhou Mi describes snow-related activities in the Song Dynasty. One is known every year. The city of Bianliang, the capital city of Nansong, would host snow-admiring activities. People make different sizes of lions made of snow, decorate them with golden bells and color ribbons, and make snow flowers, lanterns, and mountains out of snow for fun. So another person from Song Dynasty, Meng Yuanlao, in his book Dreams of Splendor of Kaifeng, also wrote that rich families of Bianliang would have feasts every winter, make snow lions and snow lanterns as a greeting for guests, which shows that there were various forms of snow-related activities. So as human society developed, snow-related sports became more diverse. So Jami al-Tawaqi, or we can say he actually compiled this book, and he recorded the skiing activities of the Mongol people. According to this book, they make a special board and stand on it, and then they hold a pole in hands as a support against their ground, glide on the snow surface, just like a boat on water. They also drag other skis. So from this, we can draw two pieces of information. First is that skiers put their feet on a snowboard and hold poles with both hands to help them glide on snow. This is very similar with the way Basmis would ski, and very similar to what we do with skiing now. Secondly, connect several skis to transport wild animals killed on a snow surface, which actually worked as a sleigh. This is very similar to sleighs that appeared later. So the Tuvans recorded in the book used to live in the Barguzin river basin. This is the main tributary of Lake Baikal. So these two kinds of snow-related activities were popular then. So geography Book 6, History of Yuan, compiled by Song Lian and others in Ming Dynasty, describes skiing activities of Kyrgyz and Han He tribes in Yuan Dynasty. Kyrgyz people live on animal husbandry alongside river and no farming well. And while it snows, they ride on wooden horses, and Han people live in mountainous areas with more wild beasts than livestock. That means both of these nationalities, both of these activities would very often they would have already mastered the skiing techniques to help them with their hunting and everyday life. Both these two tribes were minorities living in the north along the Yenisei River in Russia and were later conquered by the Yuan. They both lived in far north, which is freezing cold and frosty. And so these are the records of two ethnic groups in Yuan dynasty.
Kaiyuanlu is a large district, the vast area north of Changbai Mountain. The tribes living in Kaiyuanlu could easily travel on wooden horses or in dog sleighs in cold winter. Wooden horses came in pairs shaped like slingshots, 4 Chinese feet long and 5 Chinese inches wide. People would tie them to feet and could glide on snow and ice as fast as running horses. Whereas dog sleighs were also made of wood, shaped like an arch-shaped boat, 1 Chinese foot long and more than 2 Chinese feet wide, very light, drawn by several dogs in front. People could glide on snow and ice sitting on such sleighs. In the Ming Dynasty, snow-related activities became more diversified, including admiring snow and making snow lines, as well as snow skiing such as sledging and bobsleighing. Zhang Dai, a historian and literator in the late Ming and early Qing dynasties, described the situation where he and his friends enjoyed and played with snow in his works, Dream of Taoyuan. This is what he said. In December, snow was about 3 Chinese feet deep. In the evening, I climbed Longshan Mountain. Mountains were covered with snow. Moonlight was dim, and I could barely see the white snow. We sat there for a while and felt cold. I returned home on a sleigh drawn by goats on ice. So he described his winter activities on snow. The recreation of making snow lines in the Ming Dynasty was often recorded in literature. A Ming Dynasty folk song called Snow Lion reads like this: make lions out of snow, hundreds of decorations, thousands of styles, looking alive, just like cold-hearted people flirting tonight. Snow lions turn a cold face, and the next day, all my love will be in vain. So snow lions are cold and melt easily, just like a cold-hearted lover. The song skillfully used metaphors to express the poet's feelings. It also reflected that making snow lions was very popular at that time. So we usually find historical records in such literature. A history of the Ming Palace written by Lü Bi in the Ming Dynasty said, when rivers freeze, people can sledge on them with wood as a flat board plus seats or straw mats. 1 person in the front draws the rope while 2 and 3 people sit on the board behind. They travel as fast as flying. In forests after snow, many excited people, some drunk, travel back and forth frequently on sleighs of different colors. So back then, sleighs were also called tuochuang, literally translated into drawn beds. There could be folding chairs or straw mats on the beds. 1 would draw the sleigh while 2 or 3 sit on the sleigh. They can glide swiftly, both on ice and snow, becoming a major amusement for people in winter. Now let's take a look at the development and evolution of traditional ice-related sports. In this, skating was popular among ethnic minorities in the north. Ice beds appeared in the central plains or Zhongyuan, referring to Han Chinese habitats, no later than the Song Dynasty. In the book written by Shen Kuo, a scientist and statesman in the Northern Song Dynasty, he wrote that in Xing'an, Cang, and Jing, people make ice beds and draw them on ice. And also Lin Quan notes written by Jiang Xiufu of the Song Dynasty also wrote, people in Song and Ba transport grass by ice beds on ponds, and officials also travel on ice beds. So these two records show that the ice beds could be used for both transportation and leisure, showing that in the Song Dynasty, ice beds or ice lakes were popular in Bazhou, Xiongzhou, and Cangzhou of the Haihe River Basin in Hebei Province. In the Yuan Dynasty, ice lakes were also popular among tribes. In his travels to China, Italian traveler Marco Polo described in detail the types and the use of ice lakes in the Yuan Dynasty. He said many Tatars live in the north, and their chief is called Kaidu. To travel on ice, they make small carts or small vehicles called ice sleighs. With a flat bottom, no wheel, a half-arched front, such sleighs are fit for sliding on ice. Dogs used to draw sleighs are the size of donkeys and very strong. Each sleigh needs 6 dogs to draw in pairs. Kangistan wrote, Marco Polo wrote in his travels to China. In this book, Kaidu is the grandson of Kangistan, Ogday Khan, who is the third son of Genghis Khan, and it was established in Xinjiang. And then in 1253, rubrics sent by King Louis IX of France to spread Christianity to the Mongols, wrote in Journey of William of Rubric to the eastern parts of the world that Ukrikai people have polished bones tied to the bottom of their feet and walk on frozen snow and ice as fast as birds and animals. So Urikai was a tribe of Mongols living in the basin of the upper reaches of the Yenisei River in the Yuan Dynasty. The polished animal bones tied to the feet were like modern ice skates. So here in the picture, you can see the early skates made of animal bones. The ice sports popular among early Mongol tribes ranged from dog-drawn sleighs on ice to polished bone skates. The bones under the feet could actually be considered as original skates, very similar to the way of modern ice skating. The way of modern ice skating that we know today. And then we refer to the Encyclopedia Britannica, Volume 8, 1999. In this encyclopedia, it says, ice skating probably developed in Scandinavia as early as 1000 BC, the first skates being made from shank or rib bones of elk, oxen, reindeer, and other animals. It means that the shank or rib bones of wild animals such as reindeer and oxen with bottoms flattened were fixed on shoes for people to glide. The skating development of the Ukrikai people about 800 years ago bore a remarkable resemblance to that of the Scandinavians, who have been recognized as the creator of skating in the world. In the Ming Dynasty, ice sports became more professional, and ice sleighs, ice beds were more popular. Liu Ruoyu wrote 桌中志, in which he said, when rivers freeze in winter, people draw ice sleighs made of wooden boards. One person draws the rope in the front, and 2 or 3 people sit on the board and travel on ice like flying. So when rivers froze in the capital of the Ming Dynasty in winter, people would make ice sleighs with wooden boards and place straw mats on them. 2 or 3 people would sit on them, and one would draw in the front. So it shows that ice slates became one of people's outdoor amusement activities in winter in the Ming Dynasty. And some people could live on drawing the ice slates. And in the Qing Dynasty, research on old tales of Beijing, compiled by Yu Minzhong, wrote that Ji Shui Tan in Beijing in the Ming Dynasty was a popular place for ice-related recreation. In winter, people would often have fun and travel on ice slates drawn by one person. Some would connect more than 10 ice slates together, sit on them, and drink around stoves. This became the most fashionable way of leisure and entertainment during that period. So here in the picture, you can see the ice slates connected together. In addition to such recreational activity featuring ice beds, the Jurchen tribes in the north in the Ming Dynasty once held ice games on the second day of the first lunar month of February the 8th, 1625. This is the first ice games in our historical records. According to archives in Manchu, written in the Manchu language in the reign of Emperor Hong Taiji of the Qing Dynasty, the ice games held on the frozen Taiz River in Liaoyang were reviewed by the Supreme Chief Nurhaci and participated by Fujin imperial consorts, Manchurian and Mongol princesses and wives, Han officials and wives. The ice games were held on the surface of the Taizi River in Liaoyang. There were two major activities or events. The first one is called ball game on ice. Relocating the traditional Manchurian ball game called Tixintou onto ice surface with a total of 2 rounds. The two teams played in their own areas and tried to kick the ball made of bear and pig skin into the designated area. The team with higher scores would win. The other event is called Women's Ice Race. 3 groups of players glided from the 2 sides of the ice field to the center, and the group arriving and grabbing the prize first would win. The ice games had a far-reaching impact and laid the foundation for the establishment of ice game system and development of winter sports as a national custom. In 1642, Hong Taiji held a massive ice event on the frozen Hunhe River in Shengjing and invited the Korean Crown Prince So-Yen, who was a hostage in the Manchu court by the terms of a peace treaty at that time, to witness the event together. So according to notes of Korean envoys to Yanjing, the Qing emperor held a chuju. Chuju is a Chinese ball game similar to modern football. So the Qing emperor held a chuju competition on the Ali River, accompanied by Korean prince. The Ali River here refers to the Hunhe River, and chuju on ice is like ice soccer. The event sponsored by the Manchurian royal family was held during Lunar New Year as a festivity. This is why Hong Taiji invited the Korean prince to witness, which also had political and diplomatic significance. Now let's move on to part 4.
So in the Qing dynasty, these traditional snow-related recreation activities continue to take place, including snow beds and snow sleighs. At the same time, other events such as making snowmen first appeared in Song dynasty, now became popular and were the object of many paintings and also writings. A poem in researches on Manchu origins compiled by Gui and others sponsored by Qing Emperor said that it looks like a cart, but with no, but it has no wheels. It's like a bed, but with no legs. It's like a small house when covered with straw mats. And runs like a vehicle when drawn by a horse. It can glide on snow and ice, and since its bottom is flat like a plow drawn by animals, it is known as the snow plow. And this kind of snow plow is still used in the northeastern part of China. And this is already very different from the dog-pulled sleds. But with this kind of snow plow, because gradually it incorporated the so-called elements of snow, the ice bed, and gradually this kind of snow plows, after the taking over of China by Manchus, so in the Qing dynasty, snow plows incorporated the elements of ice beds and then finally evolved into drawn beds in so-called ice games, 冰洗. So among the emperors of Qing dynasty, there was no one who loved ice beds more than Emperor Qianlong. In 1769, he wrote a poem sitting on ice bed in snow, in which described a scene of himself sliding in snow in Taiye Pool on an ice bed. Qian Weicheng, a royal painter at that time, painted a long scroll which vividly described the scenes, illustrated the scenes described in the poem of Emperor Qianlong. So in addition to snow beds and other snow-related recreation activities, snowmen, snow lions, snow elephants, and snow horses were often mentioned in the literature and paintings of the Qing dynasty. Wu Zhenyu in Qing dynasty wrote once that when it snows in winter, every time they make lions and elephants more, they became they were the object of many inspirations and also appreciation. Basically, these are the scenes of snow-related fun activities inside the royal palace. In Hongli, Rejoicing in Snow, painted by the Italian painter Giuseppe Castiglione and Qing imperial painters, which is now stored in the palace museum. Emperor Qianlong sits in the middle of the pavilion, surrounded by princes, and some setting off firecrackers while others making snow lions. So this painting depicts the emperor enjoying the family time and snow in a very leisurely manner. So now I'll give you an outline of ice-related activities in the Qing dynasties. Ice sports in Qing dynasty basically had two types. One was managed by the imperial court, and players were selected and trained to join the royal national team for regular massive ice sports performances and competitions. The other was popular among ordinary people to really meet the need of production, hunting, survival, and recreational purposes. So this is an overview of royal ice games in the Qing dynasty. We know that Gao Shiqi was a very famous statesman in the time of Emperor Kangxi in the Qing dynasty. He once described the ice sports played in the Taiye Pool of Beijing in Jinbei Tuishi退时笔记 in 1684. So Taiye lake is Taiyi Pool is the so-called Beihai Lake nowadays in Beijing. He described the two forms of ice sports. One involved ice beds with iron bars on the bottom or strips of iron on the bottom as runners, which could this kind of ice beds can accommodate 3 or 4 people. One person would draw the bed in the front, which would slide very fast, almost like flying. The other was a kind of so-called ball throwing. It's a kind of 制球之戏, a kind of ball game on ice where hands and feet could be used at the same time. The ball was inflatable, made of leather. The skaters would be equipped with runners that actually have iron teeth so as to prevent players from slipping. So Gao Shiqi also pointed out that the game was a practice of martial arts. That is a kind of sport in which soldiers would practice their combating skills in winter. But the above mentioned simple forms of ice sports in the royal waters took place in the reign of Emperors Kangxi and Yongzheng, but they had not yet evolved into a kind of regular comprehensive form of ice sports with standards and rules. Those standards and rules were not well developed until Emperor Qianlong came into power, when the ice sports became much more diverse and famous. So the 10th year of Emperor Qianlong, that is in 1745, ice game system, so-called Bingxi, a traditional comprehensive system of sports on ice in ancient China, was formally formed in order to make it a national custom system. Qianlong took the following 2 measures. Measure 1, in the 10th year of his reign, Emperor Qianlong released Ode of Imperial Ice Games with more than 1,300 words. It described the season, grandeur, and gist of ice games, or the basic rules and principles of the ice games as a national custom. It was a masterpiece describing these ice games. It is worth mentioning that the Ode was the ancient writing that mentioned the term ice games, Bingxi, for the first time ever. So Emperor Qianlong wrote the piece for ice games by himself, which showed that ice sports had risen as a state system and had occupied a very important position in the heart and mind of the emperor. Measure 2, as required by Emperor Qianlong, the imperial painters Jing Kun, Chen Zhidao, and Fu Long jointly painted ice games in 1748. This large picture, this large drawing, mainly depicts 2 events in an ice sports ceremony: ice skaters shooting arrows at celestial balls hanging on a wooden frame called Jingmen, and another activity is called grabbing balls on ice, or fighting for balls on ice. So this, when performances reach its height, and people can be this can be very exciting. So this is a nowadays modern representation of the Bingxi at that time. So these 2 paintings portrayed those scenes, and later another picture was drawn. We know that there was the first one, Bingxi Tu, describing that 2 activities. Later, there was another picture really focusing on the shooting the ball under Jingmen. You can see that a lot of the ice activities then incorporated a lot of traditional arts, martial arts, and acrobatic moves. So both of these 2 drawings are themed around the same subject, but they gave us really a glimpse of the grand occasions of real ice games at that time. So how's the competition carried out? So this slide shows the ceremonial rules of royal ice games in the Qing dynasty. So it was organized by the Qing Empire, sponsored by Imperial Household Department in the reign of Qianlong and Ice Game Office in the reign of Guangxu, Emperor Guangxu. The main purposes of these activities were to promote martial arts, enhance national customs, and showcase national and imperial prestige. And these activities were usually held when water freezes after winter solstice. And the venue would be at the Taiye Pool to the west of the Forbidden City, namely the Beihai Lake today. So in the reign of Qianlong, participants were selected from the 8 banners, and the basically young men from the royal Manchu tribes and the 3 banners of imperial household departments. In the reign of Guangxu, players were selected on a broader basis. And the games included were 抢等、冰上抢球、转龙射球、百山子、溜龙、亮牌、一马十三式。抢等 is a kind of like what we is like the speed skating that we have today. The starting point would be 2 or 3 Chinese miles away from the emperor's ice bed, with the big flag as a mark. The players, this picture shows the participants at the starting line. They were lining up on ice skates, and a long rope would be in front of the players. So as soon as a so-called a signal was fired, then the players would rush to the finish line set up near the royal seat. And when they were about to reach the finish line, the royal bodyguards who would serve as the referees would stop the players, or flags would be planted at the finish line for players to grab. Finally, rewards would be given in accordance with the rankings. And all the royal ice games painted by imperial painter Sheng Yuan, which was now exhibited at the Palace Museum in Taipei, depicted scenes such as grabbing flags. So with the 冰上抢球, or so-called fighting for ball or grabbing ball on ice, the most intense sports at ice games developed from the early games of throwing ball, 掷球. The event would use the wide ice surface as the venue. There will be 2 teams, each with dozens of people wearing red and yellow garments respectively. The players would wear skates, and they would vie for inflated ball made with leather. And as I mentioned, they would wear skaters that have iron teeth attached to the bottom so as to prevent them from tripping.
The player who could get the ball would either dribble the ball through or to his teammates. This game is like rugby of today. Now let's look at 转龙射球 or dragon twist ball shooting. It is an ice game combining skating and archery. The players with skates on would quickly slide along a designated curved path. Amid colorful flags, the players would rush to the gate, targeting celestial ball and earth ball. So each player has 3 arrows, and they will be rewarded according to the balls, the number of balls. And so this is a simulation of 转龙射球. Another activity is called 摆山子, figure skating. It's a popular ice game in the reign of Guangxu in the late Qin dynasty. Red soil would be sprinkled onto the ice field to form double-line patterns, representing 万寿无疆, meaning longevity, and 子孙万代, meaning imperial lineage lasts for thousands of generations, and so on. So the players would slide collectively in a line between the two lines of the patterns. In such collective skating, each player could do various ice figure performances anytime based on the actual situation, similar to modern figure skating to some degree. And the only difference is that 摆山子 mostly focused on the changes of postures, paces, and twists, and barely featured rotations and jumps in modern figure skating. So here you can see the different postures, including哪吒, creeping in sea, big scorpion, double flying swallows, wave drop, and so on. 摆山子 is known as figure skating of an ancient Chinese ice sports. The next one is called 流龙, walking the dragon. It is a popular group game in the reign of Guangxu. In late Qin, signs would be placed in a dragon-shaped line on ice before the race, and the players would glide on the line. 流龙 required no player to perform individual tricks. Instead, they had to change the formation, following instructions of the leader. It, to some degree, is like the modern group calisthenics and at grand events. There were about 100 or 200 players. The players could change their formation as big dragon, small dragon, or two dragons frolicking with pearl, and so on. Next is called 亮牌, or platoon display, also known as 对阵图, meaning array. With more than 400 performers, the performance was the most spectacular part of the closing ceremony of Guangxu's ice game ceremony in late Qin. All players would touch the ice with the sharp tip of the skate on their right foot, raise their right leg, turn left on their left foot, supported by the outer part of the skate, glide more than 3 meters, and repeat the above moves alternately. Then they would glide about 7 meters, return to the center of the field, turn left quickly, slide forward more than 30 meters at the high speed, and repeat the moves 9 times. This requires skills. Annual customs and festivals in Peking, written by Fu Ca Dun Chong in the Qin dynasty, said, 亮牌 involved skillful skaters, just like dragonfly skimming over water and swallows passing through waves. Beautiful and skillful. Another game requiring skills is called 一马十三式, 13 styles on horse. An individual skating performance for ice game ceremony of Guangxu in late Qin. It's similar to modern single skating, but occasionally it would be given by 2 or more people performing human pyramids. In single-person performances, the player would not be restricted by designated tricks or rules on his moves, so he could perform freely. Here in this photo, you see Wu Tongxuan. He is a skater. According to Wu Tongxuan, he worked at the ice games office in late Qin. Before a performance, the player had to submit the 13 patterns of the performance to the ice game secretary for preliminary examination, and then the secretary would pass them on in an official communication to the throne, to the emperor, for the emperor's final approval. So this is what he said during an interview. He did a lot of performances in Beihai, and we kept the photos, so you can see his skillful performances in different postures. Probably back then he was only in his teens, a young boy. So we've covered the imperial ice-related activities in the Qin dynasty. Now let's take a look at the various forms of folk ice-related activities in the Qin dynasty. In addition to the grand ice games of the royal national team of the Qin dynasty, ice-related activities popular among ordinary people with purposes of production, survival, and recreation also took on various forms. So there were 木板溜冰, 跑冰鞋, 冰上踏举, and 冰床. So here in the slide, you see a painting in portraits of periodical offering of the period of the imperial Qin. It's about 木板溜冰. 木板溜冰 is skateboarding. It's a traditional ice game of the northern ethnic minorities. So here you can see the skate. The front of the skate was narrow, whereas the back was wide, and the front part is upturned to get over obstacles. The back part was wide, stabilizing moves on ice and snow. Such skates could be used on both ice and snow and were widely used as early skates of the northern ethnic minorities. Apart from hunting, people could also compete on pleasure for fun in their spare time. Now, 跑冰鞋 is another folk form of ice activity. It's translated as racing and skating, similar to the grabbing sports in royal ice games, often referred to by people as 溜冰鞋 and 溜冰. Annual customs and festivals in imperial capital by Panrongbi of the Qin Dynasty Road. Those who skate on ice or wear skates with iron teeth and glide on ice as fast as shooting stars and lightning to grab the flag and win. This is called 溜冰 skating. So here are two paintings describing the depicting skating in the Qin Dynasty. On the right-hand side, you see a painting with a poem about skating, and this was featured in Peking Pictorial 1906. Most of the skates in the reign of Qianlong were wooden shoes with iron blades. In late Qin, skates would have one skate or two skates or double skates. So here, this photo of Xu Zilin. He is an old skater, and his skate was special. So here you can see single blade skates in late Qin. One is shaped like dragon head, and these are kept in the Palace Museum. Another event is called 冰上踏居, an ice game combining skating with traditional 踏居, also known as 蹴鞠, a traditional Chinese ball game similar to football. As the Taiye Pool was an imperial garden that people were not allowed to enter, the ideal place for ice 蹴鞠 for ordinary people would be the spacious area of Shichahai. Due to poor circumstances, 蹴鞠 balls were often made of materials found on the spot, usually stone balls or iron balls, and sometimes even rocks, mud balls, and ice cubes. Another activity is called 冰床, ice bed. It is a common ice skating activity in winter among ordinary people in the Qin dynasty. In waters of Jishuitan, Shichahai, and moats of Beijing, local residents often enjoyed themselves on ice beds for leisure when water froze in winter. Ice beds were not only a fast and convenient means of transportation, but also a recreational activity in cold winter. So here you can see two paintings of ice beds. On the left, it was painted by Xu Yang in 1761. On the right, it's a painting published by Pictoria of the UK, painted in 1895. So ice beds, enjoying themselves in winter. And here, another two paintings. On the left, a painting about ice sleighs. And on the right, a painting of ice bed in the Qing dynasty. This is selected from Album of Customs in Beijing. So you can see people enjoying themselves on ice and on snow. So thanks to the attention paid to ice and snow activities by the imperial court of the Qing dynasty, ice-related activities displayed great diversity and prosperity both among ordinary people and the royal family. The Qing dynasty even defined ice games as a national custom, further improving and standardizing the rules. Binxi started from the Qianlong reign of the Qing dynasty. After the middle of the 19th century, with the introduction of Western sports, modern ice sports were gradually brought into China and integrated with traditional Chinese ice sports, evolving into modern Chinese ice sports. So to conclude, traditional Chinese ice and snow-related activities are not only about sports, but also about culture. Eastern winter sports and Western winter sports, traditional and winter sports and Winter Olympic Games, although their inherent characteristics and cultural values may differ due to different spatial temporal environments, but as a form of sports and culture closely related to people's cultural life, the show and contain the wisdom of people in different eras and regions. So we are going to see the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics very soon. And channel 16 of CCTV was officially launched. And we're going to play the Olympics in art. Each episode is 15 minutes long, and today Guo Lei and Wei Shan are going to introduce art related to Winter Olympics. Tomorrow night, Mr. Yuan and me will talk about Chuju, and we will introduce a painting of the Ming Dynasty about Chuju. So the 2020 Beijing Olympics will enable more people to enjoy different forms of winter-related culture in the world through dialogues between East and Western cultures across time and space, experience the traditional Chinese culture about ice and snow that focuses on the natural expression of human nature. So at the opening ceremony of this Winter Olympics, you will see performances related to the art that I have introduced in today's talk. And the Winter Olympic Games also allow more people to appreciate the competition of Winter Olympics that unleashes people's full potential. So the ice culture, as part of Chinese culture, thus has its position in the ice culture of the world. So this is what I have to say. Thank you.